The Philippines has become one of the fastest growing economies in the past decade. Quite interesting, however, is the fact that the Philippines capital market is still relatively small compared to other Asian countries. By the end of 2019, the PSE had the lowest number of listed companies in Asia at 267. As of date, the number of listed companies rose to 289. But this is still small compared to the likes of Singapore, which has more than 600 main board listed companies, or even Malaysia, which has more than 700 main market listings. This year, the net foreign direct investment in the Philippines slumped by 45.7% year on year to 448 million US dollars in January 2023. This begs us to ask, what is the current condition of the Philippine capital market? Will we be seeing developments in this area soon? If yes, how so? Today in Prime Movers, we are going to hear firsthand an insider's perspective on the current state of our country's capital market space and the future it holds. This is Prime Movers, a legal podcast that covers the latest and relevant trends and insights on Philippine legal issues and topics, expertly discussed and diluted down by the experienced legal team at Goriseta, Africa, Cauton, and Saavedra. In today's podcast, our very own Attorney Christine T. Torres, Junior Partner at Goriseta, Africa, Cauton, and Saavedra, will be hosting a discussion with our guest speaker on the current state of Philippine capital market, recent market trends, and an in-depth look on what the Philippine capital market needs in terms of market regulations in order to move forward. Attorney Christine is a corporate lawyer and an M&A lawyer who specializes in corporate and business law, securities and capital markets, and technology, media, and telecommunications. She has led a number of the firm's capital markets and securities offering transactions. Attorney Christine has been shortlisted for 2 consecutive years for Young Lawyer of the Year category, both at the ALB Southeast Asia Law Awards and at the Philippine Law Awards. She has also been consistently recognized by the Legal 500 as Next Generation Partner in Technology, Media, and Telecommunications practice area, and as a recommended lawyer in several other practice areas such as corporate and M&A, banking and finance, capital markets, and projects and energy.
Hello and welcome to Prime Movers. This is Christine Torres, a junior partner at Goriseta and a member of the corporate and technology, media, and telecommunications groups. Today in this episode, we are going to talk about the current state and the recent developments in our Philippine capital market with our guest speaker, Mr. Eduardo V. Francisco, or Ed, who is currently the President and Director of BDO Capital and Investment Corporation. Ed is the first Filipino recipient of the Achievement Award for contribution to the local capital market by the Alpha Southeast Asia during the 15th Annual Best Deal and Solution Awards in 2021. He is the former chairman of BDO Nomura Securities Inc. and chairman for the International Association of Financial Executives Institutes. He was also the co-chairman of the Capital Market Development Council of the Philippines, vice chairman of the Integrity Initiative, and has been the president of several organizations, including the Management Association of the Philippines, Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, Wharton Pen Club, BDO Securities Corporation, Makati Sports Club Inc., Federation of Valle Verde Associations, and First Valle Verde Association Inc. He holds an MBA from the Wharton School of Business of the University of Pennsylvania and a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of the Philippines, where he was awarded the Financial Management Excellence Award and the Distinguished Alumnus Award from the UP College of Business Administration. Everyone, let us all welcome Ed Francisco. Hello, Ed.
Hi, Christine. Thank you for inviting me to speak on your podcast. The capital market is one of the most crucial drivers in the economy, but it's not often that it's a topic of conversation. So this is rare, and I appreciate the chance to share my thoughts. I'm looking forward to having a great discussion with you today.
It's good to finally have you in our podcast, Ed. To start off our discussion, for those who may not be familiar, can you give us more background on BDO Capital?
Sure. Okay. BDO Capital is the investment house of the BDO Group. And of course, the BDO is the largest bank in the country. It's a private bank, it's listed. Now, BDO Capital was formed in 1999, the year I joined. What it basically does, and that's what all the investment houses do anyway in the country, we do the wide variety of debt underwriting, raising debt from the private market, from the banks, raising them at the capital markets, listing them in the in let's say the PDEX. We also raise syndicated loans. We do advisories, M&A. We do also equity placement, so whether on a private placement or a capital markets, and that means we list it on a PSE. So we basically do everything to help our clients. It's not naman everything for everyone, but at least we try to help them. Not with just just products, but more solutions.
Wow. So now, as one of the leading investment houses in the Philippines, Ed, can you share with us, aside, of course, from the financial requirements and standing, since I know that you do underwrite securities, what are the key factors that you consider before you underwrite securities or when you are evaluating corporations that intend to do IPO in the Philippines?
Hi, sure, Christine. Basically, let me give you at least a rule of thumb that we apply. When you're doing an IPO now, the minimum size for the IPO should be siguro mga 50 to 100 million pesos. That's for the SME. And then for the larger corporates, of course, billions are better because you're tapping foreign markets. For the bond market, at least it's another capital exchange. I recommend at least 3 billion to make it worth your while. Now, to go back to your question on what factors, of course, it's important that I have a good name, good story. Of course, the numbers should be there, but the qualitative side is they should be an industry leader, ideally sunrise, not a sunset industry. Management should be there with the expertise and good shareholders and transparency, the desire to really open up and share the fruits of their labor and get new investors in.
That's very interesting to know, Ed. Of course, we know that there are requirements like the track record, financial requirements, among others, that should generally be complied with in order to go public. But, most people still assume that you need to be in a certain level to be able to secure investments or funding or even an underwriter who is willing to underwrite their IPO. Based on the statistics, though, well, as compared to the previous years, in 2022, we've seen more companies list in the SME board, right? I think around 4 SMEs. So it's a nice piece of development there. Now, let's dive deep into more in-depth discussion on the Philippine capital market. Despite the reopening of our economy, with the easing and lifting of restrictions, and the resulting recovery of businesses, we know that due to a very challenging external environment, the rising inflation, recession fears, and higher interest rates, 2022 was not the most ideal year for the local stock market, right? In fact, we've seen more IPOs defer their initial public offerings last year because of the unstable market conditions. We have also been seeing observations that the Philippines still lags behind other Southeast Asian countries, specifically Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. So, as an insider, Ed, I want to know your thoughts. How would you describe the Philippine capital market in 2023? Do you foresee more or fewer deals? And what is the current state and landscape?
Sure, Christine. Maybe just to give some background also. Yes, we have lagged behind our ASEAN neighbors, right? In fact, we were the first exchange, ironically, and now we're were one of the smallest ones. But at least in terms of number of deals we were picking up already in 2021, 2022 lang, it went down. But in the past, kasi historically, we do 3 to 5 IPOs a year lang. And then 2021, I think we did 14, as you mentioned, and then a little less last year. So it was trending upwards na. I guess for this year, again, because it's still a weak market, and you're right, I have a lot of deals in the pipeline, but we'd have to postpone it. Again, because my issuers still want to go tap the market. The question lang is the other side, the investors naman are medyo too bearish and they were demand such a low price. So wala nang meeting of the mind. So what we do is we just ano lang, we recommend to postpone it na lang in the hopes of a return of the investors that they're more bullish and then they will accept a better price. So there are fewer deals in the IPO side, but I'm glad to hear nga that there are some of these smaller deals that are going out. It's at least it's legacy building, also getting them known. The large ones will be later on, hopefully. But then also on the other hand, on the bond market side naman, it continues. So at least that's the thing that saves us. And then there have also been some quasi equity deals. When I say quasi, these are the hybrids or the perpetual preferred shares or preferred shares. We've seen Petron, we're seeing San Miguel, we're seeing the Aboitiz group come out. So they are quasi fixed income, but also quasi equity. So at least in a way, we're giving alternatives to our investors.
Right. And we also have the real estate investment trusts or REITs, right? And currently, I know we have eight. And in January, just correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, I heard that the PSE is targeting 14 IPOs this year, which is very promising because 11 of which are companies and REITs that will list on the main board, while three are going to list in the SME board. I've also seen the news that SM Prime Holdings Inc. is looking to raise, I think, 1 billion by listing its REIT unit this year. Talking about REITs, is this an encouraging trend, and will the uncertain markets play well for REITs?
Yeah, Christine, no. The REITs in a way are a saving grace for the Philippine capital markets. Why is this? Because when investors buy the traditional IPOs of plain vanilla common shares, there is no dividend yield, right? The client or the issuer can give a dividend, but it's under discretion. So you're not sure if you'll have a yield. How do you make money on a stock? Two ways, right? One is the dividend, and the other one is price of appreciation. So because nga of the uncertainties in the market and some pessimism, plain vanilla IPOs have been more challenging. REITs, on the other hand, provide steady or anticipated dividend yield. So they are quasi fixed income, and that's why it's a new class, and that's why it's done very well. We've had many successful REITs, as you mentioned, because now investor has the possible upside of the price appreciation, especially when there's land included in it. At the same time, they have a yield. So parang they have the best
Mm,
of both worlds. So it's encouraging. The SM deal hopefully will push through. Of course involved in that. That's an affiliate of ours. And then there are other REITs also. The Edgar Saavedra group of Megawide was doing a REIT, planning another REIT for their parent of the C-REIT. Of course, we listed also
yeah,
C-REIT. That's
wow.
the first, yeah, that was the first non-real estate REIT of the country. So that was very successful, and foreign companies like that. So hopefully we'll do more of that. So at least that should, I guess, should revive or bring interest in our markets when we do those, Christine.
Okay, so based on what you just shared, it seems that the capital market space could be seeing some encouraging trends or interesting new developments, right? So I know that there are still continuing concerns about high inflation and interest rates, economic conditions, and the market conditions, which keep investors cautious. Aside from the said issues, what do you think are the factors that significantly affect the investor sentiment in the Philippine capital markets?
Yeah, Christine, it's generally aside nga from inflation, interest rates. the general macro scenario is a key element, right? Uh, but then also the demand abroad. Maybe I'll elaborate more. Because if you think you should say, in terms of macro lang, we should not have a problem kasi 'di ba our growth rate is one of the fastest in the region. Even if rates GDP slows down from the original 6.5, it goes down to 5.5 or even 6. That's still much better than maybe 90% of the world. I think in Southeast Asia, Vietnam lang yata is the one growing faster than us, but everywhere else we're growing faster. And yet, why is the market medyo kinakabahan? Again, it's because nga of what's happening in Ukraine, magkakaproblema ba sa Taiwan, will the peso depreciate more? Because from a foreigner's perspective, remember, we're competing for funds for their investments. So they could put it anywhere. Even if our economic story is very good, but if our peso depreciates, example lang, by 5%, even if they make 6% on their stock, their effective return is only 1% because may FX loss ng 5%. So 6 minus 5. That's why there has to be a more compelling story also the macro side, and hopefully these headwinds don't go there. And then generally also, I guess, what are the other factors for investor sentiments? They're really looking where rates are going. That's very critical for this year. The nice thing of what I guess Mr. Philip Medalla and what Ben Diokno of the DOF did recently, right? They signaled the pause in interest rates. That's important because if the central bank stops raising rates, that means hopefully that means that it's peaked already and maybe it will slow down, maybe another rate hike, and then maybe it will go down. So what does that mean? If you're an investor, in the past, you just transfer all your excess money from equity into fixed income kasi mataas yung interest rates. If interest rates start to taper going down, that means they will say, Oy, it's going down na. Maybe I should put it back into equities kasi I'll get a better yield. So that's the indication we're looking for. And then that will bring foreign also inside. And then the local investors also will shift out of time deposits and go back into equity. So hopefully the latter half of the year will see that signal. It will be the return, maybe the revenge investments of the local market. And hopefully the foreign investors will come back also with a big bang.
Yeah, so meaning to say, in the equities market, seems to me that there is still uncertainty and it still remains to be a common theme, right? But given the
Yes.
challenges, what do you think are some of the common mistakes that both investors and the company going public make in their deals, and how can they avoid making such mistakes?
Okay. I guess the nice thing about maybe I can just share a little background of how I manage my firm and relating it also to your firm. We're both very aggressive. I'm a friend of Mark Goriseta, and we're both aggressive, and we like to find ways to help our customers. One of the problems usually that happens with our clients is sometimes they are beset with analysis by paralysis, di ba? Because if you think everything is doom and gloom, you will postpone everything. You will say, stop muna the production, stop muna working on this IPO. I think that is totally wrong. Because the way markets work, sometimes the market will reopen. Sandali lang, baka isa, dalawang buwan. You should be ready to tap the market when it's ready. That's one. Be ready. And that's why at least tayo, our firms are aggressive in that sense. We're always, behind our customers, willing to, roll up our sleeves and work with them. Second, aside from being ready also, you don't have to go for 100% of what you need in the capital markets. Let's just say example, you are targeting a return or a PE multiple, example lang of 25 times. If the market is dictating, you can raise money, but instead of 25 times, 15 times. I could even say maybe to the issuer, you might still considering tapping that. Lower na lang the amount you're raising, but at least you get yourself out there. Your name is there because an IPO naman is not just raising money. It's also the seal of good housekeeping na lumabas ka sa merkado. And that, in fact, our recommendation to Mr. Vince Perez when he did his Alter Energy IPO. It was lower than he had originally wanted, but at least it's a way of getting out. And then, and because of that, at least helps him deal with new investors. It adds to his credibility. And then we can just always do a follow-on offering naman, meaning you can raise more equity, you can already start raising more debt also. So may ano naman na there is a benefit even if it's smaller. So yun, generally two things. One is being too careful and not doing anything, and second also maybe not being more flexible and accepting a smaller amount, a lower pricing, but it will lead to better returns in the future naman.
Yeah, meaning being more open to certain adjustments, right, Ed?
Yes, yeah. Be flexible lang talaga. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ed, let's now move on to capital market regulations. In terms of regulations, what do you think are some of the promising developments that the Philippines has had? And are there also regulations that you do not necessarily agree with?
Okay. Okay, sure, sure. No, I mean there have been developments naman no. For example, part of the regulation, so the PSC has done is they've created this sponsor model. Maybe let me explain it a bit. Uh, the sponsor model is very similar to the SPAC model, which is done in the US and the developed countries. In fact, you lawyers should be the ones explaining that because that's a phenomenon we don't have here. But effectively,
Yes.
a sponsor model is there really is no story yet. But then because of the name of this sponsor and your trust in him, you'll invest money in the hope that he will invest it in good, make money for you. That's basically the SPAC model. The sponsor model is similar also, but the only challenge here, because that's why we have the sponsor model, but I haven't seen any sponsor model listings yet. Because there are rules here were a little different from what I had hoped. I think here in the sponsor model that was eventually crafted, there's a maximum amount that the sponsor should take, and it's not. If for me, it's not enough skin in the
Mm-mm.
game. Ideally, the sponsor model should be, you're really 100% behind it. Or for example, you're like an Elon Musk, we ride and die with you, but you're Elon Musk. Here, if it's somebody else, and then eventually he'll just sell lang after a year, parang, ilalaglag niya, bibitawan niya. That's why. So that's one, but I'm hopeful that will create more buzz, also give us a new products. Because for example, if you have good chefs, example lang, maybe because I love food and I love
Mm-mm.
eating, and if you bring in a great chef and he can create new products with his story, because he can create new restaurants and get us hopefully Michelin rated restaurants in the Philippines, we will invest in him. So that's one way to do a sponsor model also. He's not necessarily a businessman, but because he has the name, he's a Filipino chef, or not necessarily a Filipino, but he's successful abroad, but he's returning back or coming back, giving back, that would be great. Uh, another I guess product that they've done also, the PSE, is they modified the rules because now they allow IPOs for preferred shares only, not just common shares. So at least some of our customers, Christine, who are concerned about dilution, this is one way to tap the capital markets because they can issue a preferred share. So preferred shares, it's non-voting, but they get a fixed dividend yield. So those are options. And then the other option, at least in the bond markets naman, the SEC and the PSE, why that's why also nabuhay the last 2 years, there were a lot of bonds by the bank issues. So that was the one, that was the, I guess a year ago it was REITs, 2 years ago it was bank bonds, and then the theme also, not just for bonds in general or for banks, was ESG, environmental sustainability. So when you make it, it sounds sexy, but it's also for a good cause. So ESG, UN SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. So these are things that are useful. And then there are specific investors who are willing to look at that, even if the yields are not as attractive as others, but because it's doing good for the environment, for the country, for the planet, then they will invest in it. So those are, I think, those are the things that are interesting, and regulations also geared towards listing more of these equity and debt products, Christine.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, so let's talk in terms of needs. As we all know, the government has endeavored to increase foreign investments for the past years. In line with this, we have the CREATE law, which provided benefits for the investors in line with the 2022 Strategic Investment Priority Plan. Moreover, full foreign ownership is now allowed for previously nationalized activities such as retail trade, telecommunications, domestic shipping, airlines, and expressways. Other than those, what other regulations do you think should be implemented by the government to further drive investments or improve the current state of our capital market?
Oh, that's a tough question. Let me think about it. Uh, so at least from the capital market side, I'll answer it two ways. Now, one's the capital market side and one is the non-capital markets. From the capital market side, one of the nice things that happened was because of the create law, they removed the IPO tax because that was one of the biggest costs in doing an IPO, and that deferred a lot of potential IPOs because that was potentially between 2 to 4%. So when that was removed because of the create law, that made it cheaper to do an IPO. From the non-capital market side naman, I guess aside from what you mentioned already, I guess what's important really is ease of use or ease of investments, uh, because we're still in here a lot of red tape. I guess you yourselves, your clients are experiencing this. When you have clients, even if they're not yet tapping the market, but they just want to build the power plant, they have to get almost 160 signatures. And to build the power plant, I heard it takes between 3 to 5 years for all the approval. So if that's the kind of process we're talking about, diba? The IPO itself can take 1 to 2 months. I can do an IPO in 3 months. But if it takes you 5 years to get your approvals and 165 signatures, kawawa naman talaga. So even if you allow 100% foreign ownership, if these things are not changed, it becomes harder. Now, I just wanted to share. I was a speaker in a BOI conference, Department of Trade, a few weeks back, sponsored by the British Chamber. There were high-ranking BOI officials, and what was interesting is they have this green corridor. I'm not sure if it's officially launched, pero I like the idea because they will assign a senior BOI DTI official to new investors para to hold their hand in the process. Kasi ang tumatagal dito yung getting LG approval, barangay, etc. Tapos minsan pabalik-balik. Parang if there's somebody helping, shepherding you, hopefully that will make it faster, no? For me, that's the key for the investments because even in some forums where I spoke on energy, for example, the foreign investors view this administration positively, and with what Secretary Lotilla of the Department of Energy has done, they've made significant changes. They're allowing 100% ownership. They've made changes. So they're encouraged by that. It's the law, but it's the actual practice, the ease of getting investments, the approvals and everything is the challenge. And hopefully those will be fixed with red tape and everything. And that will allow people to invest. And then the capital markets is parang ano for me. It's the icing on the cake. They have to build the cake. You have to invest in your businesses, and that's where you also your firm is good at bringing in investors, helping startups, helping them succeed. And then once they're already successful, we list them. Then we make money for everybody.
Yes, I totally agree with you there, Ed. I believe there is so much to catch up on, not just in terms of regulations, but also in terms of increasing issuer participation, enhancing the market education, to really attract more investors to invest in IPOs. I've also seen the advent of online trading platforms for both equity and debt, which could push more retail investor participation and, help spread education and awareness about financial products that are coming to the market, right? And even our regulators, Ed, are scaling up its investor education program to encourage broad investor participation in the capital market. So, for our last question in today's episode, may I ask, what is your prediction on the state of our capital market in the upcoming quarters?
Okay. Near term, I am hopeful in the next 9 months that it will improve significantly, at least in terms of valuation. Okay. And that will bring in new investors. Now, in terms naman of the kind of investors, I totally agree that we are, because of all these moves of the BSP for financial inclusion, the banks are behind it. And we want people to not just learn to save, first of all, financial literacy. If you don't even know how to save money, how can you invest? So if they know to at least save money and at least don't finish all their money buying Starbucks and watching movies and traveling, but save, then we will give them products to invest in. So, and then also you're right, because online trading is significant. I think the latest count now, when I started in the market, there was less than 400, 500,000 people with an account in the PSE. And even if you were, let's say, 80, 90 million, that was less than 0.5% siguro. At last count, I think we already have around 1.6 million uh, accounts with the stock exchange. At least it's now almost what? Almost 1% or a little more than 1%. It's still very low to other countries, but it shows you it's growing. But of that 1.6 million, what is encouraging of that? The fastest growing segment of that 1.6 million was the online trading. COL is the largest one, and then BDO also, BDO online. We grew BDO securities because we saw it that the big untapped markets were number two. But that's the fastest growing. Admittedly, their investment sizes are not that big yet, but it's a way for us to help also people understand and invest. Diba? Kasi syempre kung estudyante ka or kung fresh grad ka, maliit pa lang ang investment mo eh. Diba? Unlike kunyari mga partner ng mga law firms, yun, malalaking mga investments, kaya na yun. Pero
Yes.
kami, yung mga bata maliliit pa lang. Pero okay lang, we're teaching them para hindi naman sila masuno. We're recommending stocks. So that's the way. We want to hold their hands, get them to invest, get them to diversify their investments, make money, so that at least, merong silang, merong kinabukasan. So I guess my view of the market is over the medium term, as they get more sophisticated, we will follow the model that other markets have. Today, unfortunately, we're still very bank centric, meaning the financial resources of the country, more than 95% are in the banks. In other countries, the financial resources maybe 80, 70%, the rest in the bond market, the equity market, ang laki. Tayo maliit pa lang, so baby lang talaga ang stock market, ang bond market. But as we grow, as we get more sophisticated, habol yan, and that will be good because now every Filipino, instead of today yata the financial literacy, I think mga 40% lang yata of Filipinos have bank accounts. So it's that medyo backward pa tayo. Hopefully in a few years, 80% or 90% will have bank accounts. And because it will double, of those 80 or 90%, hopefully every or maybe at least 5 or 10% of the Filipinos will have bond investments or equity investments. If you think about that, if I say, let's say, 5% of Filipinos, if we're currently 1% lang now, that's a 500% growth. Ang laki niyan. From 1.6 million times 5 is 8 million. That's significant. If we can do that lang, at least that will help also in the maturity of the market. There'll be more investors. There'll be more price discovery. Harder to make scams also kasi you're more investors making bantay. It would be good for the market overall and good for the Filipinos sana. So that's my wish. Parang a broader market and more inclusion.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful also that the Filipinos can catch up. And, I wanted to see more younger people investing in the stock market. I'm also looking forward to see how our capital market will develop in the next few months. So, thank you very much, Ed, for sharing with us your knowledge and expertise in the field of capital market. I'm sure our listeners learned a lot today.
Thank you for inviting me, Christine, and good luck to you in the firm.
Thank you. So that is it for today's episode of Prime Movers. We hope that our listeners enjoyed our very informative discussion for today. Once again, this is Christine Torres, and have a great day to all of you. Catch us again in our next Prime Movers episode.